just over the past 9 months, we ended up collecting over 700,000 Canadian dollars and shipping over 10 tons of tactical supplies to Ukraine.
I feel very inspired and mobilized to do right by Ukraine, because I don't know that the world has done right by Ukraine historically, and I wanted to appeal to Canadians. I wanted to ask them for funds to direct and funnel to these NGOs on the ground in Ukraine who are meeting the distinct needs of LGBTQ plus folks internally displaced or trapped by war.
As a community of Ukrainian students who are studying abroad, we have taken the initiative of organizing a project, Ukrainian Week in Toronto.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course. I'm your host, Varvara Shmygalova. In today's episode, we'd like to highlight the topic of Ukrainians helping their motherland from abroad. The aid can come in many different shapes and forms. Some fundraise money and ship humanitarian aid or tactical equipment to Ukraine. Others organize festivals to educate and raise awareness through cultural diplomacy. Third, tend to the needs of vulnerable groups of the population. In various ways, each in their own area, Ukrainians keep working to bring the Victory Day closer. If you want to find out more about this subject, please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our videos in the future. Please welcome our first speaker, brilliant Svitlana Nechyporenko, co-founding member of Second Front Ukraine Foundation. She will talk about how their initiative was born, how it grew and evolved, and the challenges that it faced.
Hello, my name is Svitlana Nechyporenko. I am the co-founding member of Second Front Ukraine Foundation, and I'm here to talk about our activities, about our foundation, our volunteers, and what's planned for the future for us. And I'll start by sharing briefly about our history. We started our journey on February 26th when several of us Ukrainians were standing at a rally in front of the Hungarian consulate in Toronto. And we decided to unite our efforts and form a group of volunteers with relatives in Ukraine. We were in a lot of pain at that time and still are. But those first 2 weeks of war were a nightmare for all of us. And we were all looking for any possible way of contributing to Ukraine just to make those weeks a bit more bearable. And so we decided to come together and start helping Ukraine. And that same evening, we all connected on social media and planned our first series of rallies that happened the following day. The first one was in front of the US consulate, and then the second was in front of the Russian consulate. During that night, we emailed media contacts in Toronto. We had 4 channels join us, and we were giving as many interviews as possible just to spread awareness and share our stories of what it was like being Ukrainians, living in Toronto, watching the news on TV, staying in touch with our families on the phone, checking on them, just seeing tanks enter Kiev and other cities in Ukraine. And our lives were pretty much just falling apart, and we really wanted Canada and the world to hear about it. And so that's how it all started. And Second Front Ukraine Foundation, as an organization, made it on the news. A few days later, we found ourselves in our first office space. It was a warehouse in North York. And I think at that point, there were probably about 20 people, friends of friends, whoever found themselves in front of that Hungarian consulate. Or, as I said, friends of friends, we all gathered and started talking about what is it that we can do to help Ukraine. And in Toronto at that time, there were 3 different kinds of initiatives going on. Humanitarian donations were being collected, such as diapers, non-perishable food, clothing, sleeping bags. The second category were medical supplies. And then the third were tactical, non-lethal supplies. We decided that our focus was going to be the third category, military supplies donations, because that we found was quite challenging. We didn't have the experience and knowledge to support the medical sector. And also we
could see that there's enough happening with the humanitarian supplies and warehouses, shipping locations that were full of boxes, containers that were going to take months to ship to Ukraine. And we knew that Europe had enough of those supplies. So let's focus on something that we can still source here, would take up less space. It's very valuable. So we decided that the military sector is what we're going to be focusing on. We created a website. We created an organizational structure. We've incorporated. We developed a board of directors. We started meeting people. We started reaching out to our networks, reaching out to the Embassy of Ukraine here in Canada, reaching out to any contacts that we had in Ukraine. We were learning on the go about what kinds of tactical supplies are required, who do we ship them to, what kind of documentation do we require in order to succeed in that. We applied for an expert license specifically for military grade items, and that was quite the journey. And just over the past 9 months, we ended up collecting over 700,000 Canadian dollars and shipping over 10 tons of tactical supplies to Ukraine. Since February, many things have changed. The organization has grown, then people left because there's only so much energy that one can spend on these kinds of initiatives, and a lot of time is put into this. We started off by working night and day. Now we're shifting it to working our full-time jobs during the day and then switching to our nighttime job, which is the volunteer initiative. 7 days a week, every weekend we spend on Second Front Ukraine. And so what also changed were the methods of collecting donations. If at the beginning it was easy to just collect cash and people were willing to donate anywhere to any organization that they trusted, with time it all changed, and there's only so many times one person can donate money to a cause. And so I think that all charities across the world notice that with time donations drop. Specifically, when it comes to war in Ukraine, we see the media attention that has dropped, and so did the donations. And we had to come up with a creative way of fundraising. One of the challenges that we faced is that we do not qualify for charity status in Canada because of the nature of our cause. We fundraise for the military. And so we do not issue tax receipts, which are crucial when it comes to corporate donations, large donations. Many people, even if it's $100 donation, they still look for that tax receipt, and we're not able to provide them. So right there, we're missing out on an entire target audience. But that being said, we still have some representatives of the corporate sector that have been amazing. And regardless of the fact that they cannot receive a tax receipt, just by knowing firsthand what we're involved with, what kind of activities do we do, what do we source, where do we send these supplies, and who's involved, they're willing to donate. And either local businesses that raise a couple of $100 in a month and they just drop it into our account, or other organizations that can afford to donate $15,000 to us, and we'll use that money. And the great thing is that we can track down in live time, who is it in Ukraine, which brigades are we communicating with, where are their funds being donated to, what kind of supplies are we buying. And so they see firsthand how things are developing, and that's how they gain the trust in us. They know that we know what we're doing. One of the other ways of raising donations that we had to come to was creative projects. Either these are fundraising concerts where we fundraise by charging a minimum donation to enter. Merchandise sales, we have an online shop where we sell our merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies. We have an entire series of different graphic designs. Also, we had a virtual marathon that we launched on October 1st. It just ended on November 15th, where people could register from anywhere in the world. One registration covered a pair of military boots, winter military boots, and registrants could add extra boots or socks to their cart. And people could run anywhere in the world at their own pace, their own location, their own distance. Some could walk. but everyone receives a medal. And with that initiative, we just raised over $40,000. And now we're working on purchasing all of those boots, connecting with the brigades in Ukraine, collecting their shoe sizes and shipping it to them. As for our future, what we're looking for is finding a way. Well, we're applying for charitable status, but not for Second Front. This would be a completely different organization, because with charitable status, with the ability of issuing tax receipts, we can open so many more doors in Canada. People would be more open to donating to us. And with that money, we're thinking we would invest that into rebuilding Ukraine and supporting business in Ukraine. And so we'll see how things develop. We have tons of energy. We have very motivated volunteers. We're always looking for talent in Canada, in Ukraine, wherever people are. We have volunteers who live in Kiev, and they join into our Zoom calls at 6 p.m. here in Canada, and they love being volunteers with us. And so energy is still there, and we're really excited about what the future holds and what's waiting ahead for us. So if you wish to read more about us, if you want to volunteer with us, if you would like to see what we've been busy with, what we've been up to over the past 9 months and what we're planning for the nearest future, please follow us on social media. We have a Twitter account, Instagram account, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Visit our website, secondfrontukraine.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you in our community. Thank you.
Next, please hear from Andrew Kushnir, artist, activist, and the founder of We Support LGBTQ Ukraine. He will share the reasoning and the importance behind his initiative and highlight how it's helping people on a personal level and also on a global level of human rights and freedom.
My name is Andrew Kushnir, and I'm an artist and activist based in Toronto, Canada. And I am the founder of the We Support LGBTQ Ukraine Fund. This is something that I incepted in late April of 2022. And it really was born of this humanitarian aid gap that I was perceiving. I have friends in Ukraine who are activists in the LGBTQ plus community. I care about them deeply. I did what I could to raise awareness about their situation in the first few months after the full-scale invasion. But as time wore on, I was just detecting the ways in which they were falling on the margins of, the global humanitarian aid effort. And I wanted to appeal to Canadians. I wanted to ask them for funds to direct and funnel to these NGOs on the ground in Ukraine who are meeting the distinct needs of LGBTQ plus folks internally displaced or trapped by war. I would argue that the goals of the We Support LGBTQ Ukraine Fund are twofold. One of them is to raise money, of course, and to get that money to those on the ground who know where the needs are, know where their community lies, and the struggles of that community, and how to alleviate those struggles. So that's one piece of it. And then I'd say another goal is the visibility piece. I think it's really important in these times to make visible the realities and dignity, frankly, of LGBTQ plus Ukrainians. They are full citizens, maybe not in terms of their rights currently in Ukraine, but certainly in terms of their action during this wartime. They are in the territorial defense. They are in the armed forces. They are on the front lines of the humanitarian aid work. And so I think it's really important at this time, and I hope the fund and my group is doing what it can to not only resource them, help them do the work they're doing, but also platform that work, make them knowable to the world. I do think that a free Ukraine is a queer Ukraine, and so it's incumbent on us to support these folks at this time. I'd say my main target audience is the Canadian public, but I'd get a little bit more specific than that. I'd say that one of the audiences within that is the Ukrainian diaspora. Historically, that diaspora has been fairly conservative, and I want to say, and I believe this to be true, that there is a change happening. That's largely due to the activism, to the incredible work that has been happening in Ukraine and the reshaping of that society. But it also has been incumbent on LGBTQ plus plus Ukrainians such as myself in Canada to make ourselves known, to speak out, to say, yes, we are a part of your community. There's more than one way to be a Ukrainian. And so I appeal not only to the Canadian public to support, again, these NGOs, these activists, but I appeal to the diaspora to go, please include us. Please recognize us as part of your diversity. And in that diversity, recognize that there's great strength. I think it's important to keep working towards our victory because, frankly, as much as we may want to localize this war, we may want to point at a spot on the globe and say, this is where it's happening. I do think this is a global situation. I think we're all a part of this. And if we reflect back on 2014, when Russia illegally annexed Crimea, and the world essentially allowed that to pass, allowed that to go, I think it's incumbent on us to recognize that we seeded this present that we find ourselves in. We enabled a tyrant, and that tyrant has gone the distance and now has decided that he's going to swallow an entire sovereign nation. So I feel like we have to take some responsibility for that. And so I feel very inspired and mobilized to do right by Ukraine, because I don't know that the world has done right by Ukraine historically. And also this notion of, and I think I said it earlier, a queer Ukraine is a free Ukraine, and a free Ukraine is a queer Ukraine. I think having LGBTQ plus folks fully enshrined as citizens, that means having marriage rights, that means having their partnerships recognized by the state, that means being able to walk hand in hand with their partner in the streets safely. All of those things, that is the Ukraine of the future. That's the Ukraine I am fighting for right now, and I deeply, deeply believe it to be possible. I think in these times when things are broken down, it's such an opportunity to reshape and make things better. I think one of the main challenges, and I think most Ukrainians living abroad would attest to this, is the cognitive dissonance, is the fact that every day we wake up in our comfy beds, in relative comfort, in relative safety here in our part of the world, and we turn on our phones or we see messages from loved ones in Ukraine, and we realize that they are not only a world away, physically, but they are a world away in terms of the kind of time that they're experiencing. We are in peacetime and they are in wartime. And I find that constantly discombobulating. I find that it makes my other work very challenging. I'm often distracted. I gotta say, and I've told this to my staff members at my company, that when I get a message from somebody from Ukraine, I do drop everything. And so I'd say that is a challenge. The fact that we are, again, abroad, we are not experiencing the same struggles and challenges and realities, but we are tethered. We are tethered to what's happening on the other side of the world, and we care deeply about what's happening. That does come with some benefit, I would say, at times. Of course, it means that we can do forms of activism, we can do forms of fundraising, we can do all sorts of stuff over here by virtue of having the privilege of safety and not having to contend with things like the power going out, our internet being spotty, or the water being turned off. We can forge on in the war effort while the infrastructure is challenged over in Ukraine. But the other thing is sometimes we can offer perspective. And in speaking to activists in Ukraine, there have been moments where I've offered an insight from afar that they have found useful, or they have found effective in their efforts. And so let us keep sort of supporting one another. They can keep inspiring us with their grit, with their tenacity, with their fight for freedom. And we may find those opportunities to fill their cups because they're working double time to protect themselves and their country. So there is this kind of reciprocal relationship that I think is critical if we're going to actually turn the tide. And my big vision is, micro and macro. And I suppose the micro vision is I see myself marching in Kyiv Pride at some point in the near future. I relish the idea of walking alongside these dear activists that I've gotten to know, these people who they've truly been heroic. They've been not only meeting the needs of their community members, but also bravely telling the story of LGBTQ plus Ukraine. And I think shifting the global perspective on what that society looks like. So I relish the thought of marching with them, of helping them carry that banner through the streets of Kyiv. And I guess more macroscopically, I'm really interested in seeing Ukraine becoming a place where queer people have full personhood and full citizenship, where their partnerships are not just, legally recognized, but respected by society as a whole. I relish being some small, tiny part of that happening. They inspire me. They're incredible people. They're deeply deserving of that dignified future. And that is what I wish for them. Well, I do hope to raise more funds through the LGBTQ plus Ukraine fund. And it's been an honor to get to know folks who are doing way more extraordinary things than raising money right now. Activists that are truly reshaping their society as we speak.
And last but not least, please welcome Yana Mokhonchuk, journalist and student at the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, Ukraine, and University of Toronto, Canada. She will address why she initiated the Ukrainian Week in Toronto project and elaborate on the importance of its educational mission and impact of cultural diplomacy overall.
Hi, my name is Yana. I'm 21 and I am a journalist and a Kyiv-Mohyla Academy student from Kyiv, Ukraine. Now I'm currently studying at University of Toronto. I travel a lot, and during these trips I always feel my mission. My mission is to tell the world about my country. In fact, foreigners know very little about Ukraine, and mostly foreigners have either military-based or some stereotypical perceptions of Ukraine. But Ukraine is so much more than that, and carrying this diplomacy mission is especially important for me to do in times of war. Therefore, on my way to Toronto, I started gathering a team to implement the Ukrainian project in Canada. And here we are. As a community of Ukrainian students who are studying abroad, we have taken the initiative of organizing a project, Ukrainian Week in Toronto. So Ukrainian Week is a one-week festival aimed at giving a perception of modern Ukraine through different events. The main idea is to show Ukraine from different sides, its cultural richness and progressiveness, and at the same time make a deep connection to the war and the reality in which this culture has to exist. So it will consist of 5 different components: a pop art exhibition, truths, symbols and memes of Ukrainian resistance, Ukrainian movie night, an outdoor photo exhibition, 10 photos of war, educational posters around University of Toronto campus, and a UA party with hip-hop, pop and techno music along with original party activities. So we have 3 main missions of this project. The first one is to introduce real Ukraine. Currently, Ukraine is in its big bang phase, let's say, and since independence in 1991, it has been developing in art, IT industry, and youth culture in so many unique ways. Our goal is to show people in Canada what real Ukraine looks like and how it continues to rediscover itself in the contents of war. Our second mission is to show our perspective of war. The war is ongoing, and the worst thing about it is that it affects everybody. We want to show the Canadians the consequences of the Russian invasion through a magnifying glass of lived experiences and prove that war is closer to people from even other countries than they might think. And the third mission of our project is to raise money for Ukrainian students at war. Many students from our home university, Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, are now defending Ukraine on the front lines. And we want to help them get closer to our victory. This is why we're launching an initiative, Students for Students Defenders, together with NGO Second Front Ukraine Foundation. And we want to raise money for our peers who put their education on hold and fight for freedom and democracy. Undoubtedly, victory is the joint shared task of every Ukrainian, and I believe that every Ukrainian now fights on their own front by continuing to pursue their path forward. And in time of complete uncertainty, I know that the best thing I can do for myself as a Ukrainian citizen is to continue my education and work on the international arena. I believe in the power of education, as I think being educated means being free, and the power of knowledge provides me with the ability to change this world. That's why after graduation, I plan to take an internship at Ukrainian embassy abroad, and I continue to work in the diplomacy and journalism spheres. I see it as a just logical continuation of my mission, being representative of Ukraine and help my country in different ways abroad.
You've been watching a special project by Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukrainian Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!